Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew, Keith Johnson.
I am so three-dimensional.
And Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
And Alan couldn't be here with us today because it's his birthday.
Happy birthday, Alan.
Happy birthday, Alan.
Coach Leash Doc Josh.
There you go.
Wow, you're getting better at that.
We've got a packed show today. We're going to be talking about the new short film from the Roddenberry Archive and OTOY called Unification. It has sort of the Trek sphere bubbling right now, talking about it.
AKA, I'm not going to cry.
And then we're going to talk about the latest Lower Decks episode of Gods and Angles. But before we get into all that, Keith, do you have some This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, just a couple of things. We had other stuff to do, but I thought a couple of things were kind of cool. We talk about legacy. 1966, the 17th of November. This was the airing of The Menagerie, Part 1. Obviously, as everybody knows, fascinating because the original episode was The Cage, right? The first pilot. And I think most people, I think everybody saw The Menagerie before they saw The Cage, unless you were somebody who was, I don't know, maybe at one of the Star Trek conventions or the actual early showing of the series when Gene Roddenberry first did the series, because the actual original Cage didn't get aired on regular TV for years.
Right.
So I saw The Menagerie like I think everybody else saw The Menagerie. And I think there's good and bad to me personally about The Menagerie because it's a brilliant use of footage that had already been shot. But it's actually a weird story to me because I don't care what you say about logic. Spock committed mutiny, threw that poor slub around when he was trying to put the fake tapes in, hijacked the ship, all this kind of crazy stuff. But then at the end of the whole thing, it's kind of like, well, I was logical about the whole thing. So it's a weird one to me. And later on, when we talk about the famous episode, The Naked Time, when the guy asked Spock, has there ever been a mutiny on the starship? And Spock says, no. I'm like, dude, yes, there was.
You did it.
You did it. But still a good episode.
Yeah, The Menagerie is a great one. It was a great reuse of that footage.
Yeah.
Obviously, the difficulty they had was that the Cage footage had a different crew, and the ship looked different, and the uniforms looked different. But just weaving that into the backstory of the show was fantastic. I mean, that's something you didn't see a lot in those days was, oh, by the way, here's the ship 11 years ago.
Yes.
You know, and it looks like it could really be 11 years ago.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they had cool, and it was, you're right, because when you see the ship as it were in their time with Kirk and you go back 13 years, they had those cool gooseneck lamps or gooseneck little readers that they had. Right. The computer was a paper printout instead of talking, which I thought was just awesome. And then the transporter sequence took like 20 minutes and there was two guys, and remember, one of the guys actually had glasses on in one scene. It's great stuff.
Yeah, and you're right. It was 13 years ago. 11 years is how long Spock had served with Pike. My bad.
That's right, 13. Then exactly 1 year later, we're talking history here. 17th November 1967 was the airing of Journey to Babel.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's Spock.
Yeah,
Spock and Amanda and his father. Started establishing the Star Trek trope that almost every father in Star Trek with Cisco kind of sucks as a father. Right. And I think he may be the only one who doesn't suck as a father. Yeah. For what we've seen so far.
Both Ciscos, because Joseph Cisco, when he comes on, he's also not a jerk, which is unusual for a Star Trek dad.
And that was 100% Avery Brooks, who said, I think everybody knows the story. Avery Brooks, like, look, I'm not going to be another black man who's not responsible for his kids. And that's why the Ciscos are the only healthy family pretty much in all of Star Trek.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah. And Journey to Babel also, I'm sorry, I was going to say, Journey to Babel also introduced the Federation in a new way, because you see all these different Federation delegates, which is a lot of world building, again, for Star Trek, which is something that, I mean, you hadn't seen a lot of it before. You didn't see a lot of it after. Really, Journey to Babel is where you see all, you know, the Tellarite delegates and the Andorian delegates and so forth. And I mean, it did a lot to build out the world of the show, because they would talk about Starfleet and the Federation, but you didn't often see it.
It was great. And I love those little things. Like there was one race of, I never figured out, there was a race of little people. Remember them? Yeah. And it's funny because one dude is doing like they're all doing, they're all putting like that I don't know, Play-Doh soap looking, and he's putting it and he's pouring, and the other guy said, "Oh, that's enough." And it's all those colored tubes of food. It is also one that also emphasizes that music that became known as Spock's theme. So whatever has a deep emotional moment, such as when he's talking to Amanda and she's begging him to go to his father, that doom 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 doom.
Right. Uh-oh, Keith froze up. He keeps having some Wi-Fi issues, but Veronica, have you seen Journey to Babel?
Yes, once he started talking about the delegates and whatnot, because when he originally said that, I thought of Deep Space Nine episode where they all couldn't speak it, and that's
great stuff. I think you just lost me, didn't you?
Yes. We did, but you're back now.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna deal with that. So if you lose me again,
we'll just keep moving.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then from the sublime to the ridiculous, on 1968, on the 21st of November, was the first day of filming on what would become an absolute classic. And I'll give you a hint, Herbert.
The Way to Eden.
The Way to Eden.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is up there with Spock's Brain and So Bad It's Good. It's not objectively terrible, which like my least favorite of all the original series episodes, the And the Children Shall Lead.
Yes.
At least you can laugh at it, even though it's ridiculous. The whole anti-establishment, the hippie thing, it's a weird show.
Well, it's very much a story about hippies as told by 40-year-old guys in 1968, and their understanding of hippies. But also it was sort of the time in the whole hippie and flower power culture where sort of the flower had faded, where you had things like the Manson family coming up and the cults, and it has, The Way to Eden has a real dark ending to it that, it doesn't end in a happy way. So,
exactly.
I think The Way to Eden is kind of underrated, and I think that the songs are groovy. I think those songs are cool.
Oh yeah. I like it when earlier on when Adam does "Gonna Crack My Knuckles and Jump for Joy," got a clean bill of health from Dr. McCoy.
That's right.
It's a great stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last one, I thought this is kind of interesting. In 1967, on the 27th of November, was I always wonder how the script was. It was the final draft script for Tomorrow Is Yesterday.
Okay. Which
is, of course, the one with Captain Christopher, where the Enterprise goes back in time because they approach the quote unquote Dark Star. It started the whole. Well, no, that was not the first time. The first time was in the Naked Time, but the whole concept of going so fast near a gravitational body that you go back in time. And I'm sure, as everybody knows, that episode was originally intended to be a second of a two-parter with the Naked Time,
right,
where when they mixed the cold matter and antimatter and went back in time, they overshot it and they went to Earth. So it's interesting that this is the final draft submitted on that day, which meant they had to redo it very slightly. Instead of, oh, look what happened, we just came back to 1969 Earth, and instead they went back because of that Dark Star.
Right.
But a fun episode, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it works better as a separate piece than as a continuation because it still maintains the continuity of the science in the Star Trek universe of that happening can happen to them again, and with different results, rather than going from Psi 2000 all the way back to Earth.
Right. And it's a good episode because it's got a good mix of some good drama. It's one of those episodes where they do the thing that I love sometimes. The episode opens in the action. The episode opens, the ship is shaking.
Right.
That's a great time for it to Wi-Fi to go out.
Yeah, Keith's talking to us through a time vortex. Have you seen Tomorrow's Yesterday, Veronica?
No.
Have you seen The Naked Time?
And has shaken. People are strewn. And that's This Week in Trek. And keep talking because I'm going to redo my Wi-Fi. So if I lose you this time, I'll be back.
Okay. Well, we've got a few comments while we're going along.
Awesome.
Mark is with us, and Mark commented that Beverly and Wesley are a nice little family.
Yeah.
And that's true.
That's true.
Although oftentimes it seems like Wesley would go to a man in the ship or Guinan for advice more often than he would go to his mother. But also the dad was out of the picture because his dad had died. And really, it's Star Trek dads. Star Trek moms can be annoying, but Star Trek dads are just the worst.
Exactly. Hey, the only other good Star Trek dad was Wesley's father.
True, because he didn't live long enough to be.
Exactly.
And Mark also says, "I will defend to my death The Way to Eden as a great episode."
Oh, I'm not going to argue with you on that one.
And he continued, "A group of young people looking to go back to nature." And then he commented, "The ship is shaking, but Keith is not." All right. Now, did you already redo your Wi-Fi, or do you still need to?
He still needs to.
He still needs to.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about Unification, which is the new short film from Roddenberry Archives and OTOY. Now, the Roddenberry Archives and OTOY have done a few short films before this. They did one that was sort of loosely inspired by the memory wall sequence that was cut from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and then they did another one that I thought was pretty effective. That was older Spock in the 24th century visiting sort of Kirk's grave. As it was nearby where the Enterprise had crashed on Viridian 3, and it was sort of inspired by elements from The Return, in which the Starfleet was sort of cleaning up the mess on Viridian 3, and it leads to Kirk coming back. There's a whole Borg plot and everything that was kind of fun. You had to be 15 at the time. It was pretty cool. But it was sort of inspired by that. So in this one, we get a little bit of a different story, and it was more of a focus on Kirk this time rather than just a focus on Spock. Now, people on the internet have been sort of trying to put together a storyline for this thing.
Nope.
It really feels more like a stream of consciousness piece than a strict narrative. But I mean, one of the first things we see in it is Gary Mitchell, like floating in space. And it's a pretty good recreation of Gary Mitchell, as played by Gary Lockwood. And he's credited. So I assume that they have his full consent and all that kind of stuff to use him in the, and I hope, and I would presume that he got paid for the use of his likeness. So, it's, what did you think of Gary Mitchell's appearance?
I thought it was cool because when you had actually posted this, I had not even heard about it. So I didn't know what to expect. I've always liked Gary Mitchell. I've always liked that actor. Of course, I also know him from obviously 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Right.
And also there's always been the whole conversations, which makes absolute sense. And I don't know, I assume there may have been novelizations, but a big boulder on top of Gary Mitchell wouldn't necessarily kill him. I know maybe it crushed his body, but I always kind of figured the power came back as soon as they put that boulder on him.
Right.
So this kind of assumes that he didn't die. And again, I don't know if there's a novelization that Gary Mitchell came back or not. I've never looked into that.
I don't know. I know that he's been featured in various things, but I don't remember if there's a continuation of him from there. But then, we sort of cut to Kirk, looking sort of post generations.
Yeah.
And a garden, and Saavik is there, and there's a bunch of people waiting for him, and a guy in a insurrection style dress uniform, and so forth. And there's a sort of a prominent older Vulcan man behind Saavik who is dressed up and doing some supplemental reading on this thing. That was meant to be Saavik and Spock's son, harkening back to the novel Vulcan's Heart, where Spock and Saavik got married.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a bombshell just to throw as a throwaway in this short film.
Wow.
But yeah, it's sort of the whole thing is wordless, and Kirk walks along and exchanges meaningful glances with people, and then he comes across the Beetle Geisen time agent that was seen briefly in a hologram in Discovery in season 3, who sends him. And you mentioned 2001; he had kind of a time tunnel, Dave Bowman-esque experience in the time tunnel on his way to the Kelvin universe on New Vulcan, where Spock is on his deathbed, and they share some meaningful looks there as well. And then sunset, and it's over. Now, Keith, you and I had some sort of different takeaways from this. You were sort of looking at it more as a perspective of a universe of like a Star Trek Afterlife, and that sort of thing. Well, you want to take it away with that?
Yeah, I was wondering because one thing is we saw Kirk a couple of times looking at himself at different times and different ages like that.
Right.
And then I was to the point, since he's seeing Spock die, yet at the same time, we know he and Spock are now in different universes. And then it's almost assumed, you almost get this feeling that they're together at the end. I kind of wondered and then Kirk is dead from the movies. So is that Kirk's kind of afterlife, visiting Spock when Spock is dying, going to another universe? Is that Kirk from the Nexus? Where does this take place? And because Saavik is obviously older, and Spock is dying, and Spock dying would have taken place after Kirk died.
Well, Spock dying would have taken place in the Kelvin universe 140 years earlier.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think that's where Time Agent Yor comes in
and sends him back through that.
Right.
Yeah. So,
well, but also that older man was wearing the 24th century insurrection style dress uniform at the garden party, I guess it was. Also, for what this is worth, that older man is credited in the credits as Crusher.
So that was Wesley?
I gave you all the information that I have on that.
Wow. So, yeah, it's funny because what I thought, given all the weird time shenanigans and stuff, even if that's not the purpose, it could still be a very fascinating concept of what may be life after life, whether one believes in that from a religious point of view, or whether you just take a pure physics Star Trek point of view, whereas the spirit can go on in some higher plane. It gives you possibilities. Well, gosh, what they said, there are always possibilities. It gives you possibilities, even thinking that maybe Kirk and Spock and some of them who do die will meet again in yet some other universe. Again, you don't have to be religious to sometimes think that this corporeal existence is phase one, and maybe your energy form goes into another place.
Sure.
And so that was one thing I kind of thought about, that it could be something like that.
Yeah, and Star Trek has dealt with other realms, other higher planes of existence and other forms of being and so forth. And while it's not, Star Trek itself doesn't really put forward a religion or an afterlife or a heaven and hell. There are certainly cultures in Star Trek that have that, and where we've seen evidence that those might exist in the Star Trek universe.
Right.
Obviously, the Bajorans are a big example. Their gods and so forth are actually aliens. But also, I mean, you have like the Ship of the Dead from Voyager and things like that indicate that, there could be something to some of these religions. It's kind of like those people in Voyager where, their afterlife was in the rings or whatever. And it turned out that they had the same signature as their brainwaves or something along those lines, So what was your takeaway at the end of it? Would you expect that like Kirk and Spock are off on new adventures, or would you expect like we've reached the end and we're going to be here together and die together?
It's funny you say that, because that thought reflects you. And I came away just thinking they will probably have more adventures together in another realm of existence. And I think that that's just as valid as the one that may be intended, which that was the goodbye. Sure. But, the possibilities, there are always possibilities. And then, of course, the whole thing, the human adventure, what is it, it's just beginning, or whatever Star Trek always says. I kind of felt that maybe they will go on new adventures, especially because Kirk was bouncing all over the place in ages and looking at himself. So I kind of took it as it's very possible they're just in another realm of existence where whatever that thing is, the essence goes on, and maybe they have another new adventures in another realm of existence.
Yeah.
Like I
said, he had kind of that Dave Bowman moment in the time tunnel, I'm going to call it, where he looks at his reflection, and his reflection, I've got a photo of it here as the background, is young Captain Kirk, sort of looking season one-ish.
Yeah.
Who incidentally was played by Sam Witwer. And I believe that Sam Witwer played Kirk through his various ages in this. And Sam Witwer, if you don't know him, look him up. He's been in every geek show for the last 20 years. It's like required. Battlestar Galactica and the Arrowverse, like CW kind of shows, and Star Wars and things like that. I think he's the voice of Darth Maul in the Clone Wars and that kind of thing. But he has some interesting photos on Instagram. If you look at Sam Witwer's Instagram, there's a lot of photos of him in costume at various Kirk ages, but also what looks like live in camera shots where they can see what they call the digital makeup live in camera as they're filming. I thought he was very effective as the young Kirk. He had the sort of the body language and everything.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was quite as effective as the older Kirk.
So 100%, did he play Kirk? All of this was Shatner actually Shatner in any of it?
I don't know if they used Shatner as reference for anything. I don't believe that Shatner was in it. I don't think so. And I've got some other photos here. I just grabbed some screen grabs from the internet.
The reason I wonder, he did a decent job, but I could tell that the walk wasn't quite Shatner's walk. It was minor, but I could tell it was like that's not
minor.
Yeah, you could tell really
not
a lot.
Minor. His shoulders were like back 3 feet from his body, and he was doing this weird, like almost waddle thing. It was terrible. I could not watch him if you looked at him straight on. It was okay. You did any kind of side shots at all, I was like, no, what is this? That's not how a human stands.
Well, I think part of it is that Sam Witwer is a young, fit guy, and so was a better physical match for young Kirk. And if it was him playing older Kirk, he doesn't have the body that William Shatner had when William Shatner was 62. When we last saw him in Generations. And so I didn't think that slapping Shatner's face on a different body, it was like that he was significantly trimmer than Shatner or Kirk would have been at that age. Okay. Yeah, the takeaway I more had from it was from sort of the real world perspective of like Star Trek really hasn't gone all in as a franchise on digital replacements for classic characters. Like I think probably the closest we had like they did a little bit of de-aging on Data in Picard to make Brent Spiner look younger. But whereas like Star Wars, for instance, you've had CGI Grand Moff Tarkin and Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker and so forth and so forth, where Star Trek has stuck more with recasting, and you've got like on Strange New Worlds where they're not trying to digitally replicate all the TOS characters. And I know there's a segment of fandom who think that they should, who'd be more than happy to just to watch CGI recreations of the characters they love when they were kids. I've never really felt that way because for me, is watching the joy of watching a Spock and Kirk scene with Shatner and Nimoy is that it's Shatner and Nimoy.
Agree.
And not just like digital puppets that favor them, So I didn't really get into the story, at least the first time through, because that was really what was on my mind, was that this is not what I want Star Trek to do, and I know that a lot of people enjoy this. I'm not trying to piss anybody's cereal or anything like that. It's just that, as far as watching a piece of, I would much rather watch an actor play the part, whether that actor looks like Shatner or not. You know what I mean? Yes. I would rather watch Pine and Quinto than digital animation or digital recreations of these actors. I think it's sort of the ultimate nostalgia. Like we've talked about how Picard season 3 went heavy on the nostalgia with bringing back the old ship and bringing back the old crew and so forth. And then, I mean, I don't want Star Trek to go. What I would hate for is if Paramount saw the reaction to this and thought, oh, this is what the people want is I've heard people on podcasts say, well, yeah, they can do this now. Let's just have new adventures of the old crew. But it
I heard that too. Yeah.
Well, what would your take on that be? I'm sort of giving mine. Ooh.
What do you think, Veronica?
No, don't do that, because it'll look wrong, because you are so familiar with those characters and no one will be able to properly recreate them to a point where it will be comfortable. And there's way too much uncanny valley there, and everyone's face is too smooth, and I wouldn't be able to watch it. I would be uncomfortable watching it. It wouldn't matter how good the story is. I wouldn't be able to watch it.
I think that's
not because I'm creeped out, but because I'm uncomfortable. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm extremely sensitive to the uncanny valley too, and so, but to Charles, what you said, I've talked to some much younger people. It doesn't bother them,
right?
And that's slightly,
but they're scared of clowns.
Everybody's scared of clowns, but I have friends and stuff who play a ton of video games with nothing but CGI people, and they don't look 100% real, but they're good enough. And if you go on Facebook and Instagram and that stuff now, I mean, you can't help but almost be assaulted by, even on some Star Trek. I've been in a lot of Star Trek groups just this week where they keep seeing pictures of Deanna Troi and Seven of Nine, kind of ridiculously buxom and stuff. And it's obvious CGI. It's and so many people keep going. They'll post in there. They'll say, admins, why are you letting this horrible AI stuff in there? And and I've even seen stuff like, there was something somebody posted on Facebook. It was like what the typical couple would look like in every state of the U.S. And whether they were,
I've seen that.
It was horrible. Whether it was black, white, Asian, Latino, or whatever, they all had that unnatural sheen. But a lot of people I've talked to, they're like, it's fine, dude. What are you worried about?
Right.
So I can see another generation be fine with this, which I'm unlike you, I wouldn't be. And I wonder if their uncanny valley is different than ours. Could that happen? Could that happen?
I mean, it could. And I mean, this right now, OTOY is the company that is sort of producing this in conjunction with the Roddenberry Archive. They're using pretty sophisticated technology to achieve this. But as AI becomes more and more prevalent, I mean, this in 10 years could be consumer technology with people just creating their own adventures of Kirk and Spock. You know what I mean? And I mean, these things could be extraordinarily common in a few years. And I would hate, I mean, I like for it to see people exercising their creativity, but I would hate for Star Trek to go down the road where it has to be nostalgia in order to be successful. Right. You know, where the fans won't accept anything that they haven't already seen. You know?
Yeah. And Veronica, I had a question for you because I actually asked this thought too. Right now, the uncanny valley, I can't not see it, but I can pretty much guarantee that in 10 years, with quantum computers and stuff, we will probably be able to produce at least facial images that will probably be almost impossible for us to detect. So when we get to the point, or maybe if it's 20 years, when we get to the point where you can 100% recreate a CGI of a person, would you still object to it?
Yes.
Same here. How about you, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I don't object to necessarily like animated characters or realistic animated characters.
Yes.
I wouldn't want that in place of live action drama.
Same here.
You know, I would much rather watch you know, like I said, Chris Pine or Zachary Quinto, whether they nail it or whether they don't. I'd rather see people performing. You know, I mean, I'd rather watch Ethan Peck. I have my qualms with Ethan Peck's performances as Spock, but I would rather watch Ethan Peck give a performance than, you know, an animator's recreation of Leonard Nimoy lying in a bed. You know, in particular because there are fans for whom this will be their headcanon the official last Kirk and Spock adventure, and you know, it's not for me. It's not because it's not Shatner and Nimoy. But then another sort of wrinkle in it as well is, like I said, at the top, is that both William Shatner is involved with this and he's credited. And I don't know in what capacity. I don't know that he did any performance for it, or aside from just giving his consent and possibly consulting. But also Gary Lockwood. And now these are guys who are past their prime. These guys are 90 years old. You know, that they can get a paycheck and see themselves on screen again at this late date with their consent. I mean, people aren't knocking on Gary Lockwood's door anymore like they were in the 1960s. He was a pretty hot item for a while there in the 1960s, and he was real big in the LA scene and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there is that as well. Is this an avenue for older actors to license their image and to see themselves up on the screen again and late in their careers get a payday?
I think so, and I think the truth of it is whatever we think this is going to start happening, and I think I think we're getting ready to see an absolute sea change to what you're saying in Hollywood. For example, James Earl Jones, I don't know if he did his visual image, but James Earl Jones did sign over rights for his voice. So that he gave the studio permission to continue to recreate his Darth Vader voice artificially. I don't know if he did his image, but even something that wild. So 100 years from now, you can still have seriously Darth Vader speaking with his voice, you know, and honestly, whatever his surviving family or descendants even think about it, because he said it was okay. So, and then I see a Nimoy as part of the credits on this too.
Yeah, I believe Leonard Nimoy's daughter was involved with this as well.
Yeah, so see, she's even okay with it, which to your point. And it's weird because at the same time I have some problems with it. Over several years ago, you remember Nat King Cole's daughter, the late Natalie Cole. Remember she did an Unforgettable with her father, and it was kind of cutting edge at the time. And I loved it. I thought it was great. Now that was just voice and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Like I had no qualms with the voice part. Like I didn't even think for a second about it because these people gave their permission, their likeness, and even in this case where people gave their permission and their likeness, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, but the difference with the Nat King Cole thing is that they were using a recording that Nat King Cole recorded. Right. They aren't splicing in here footage that William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy filmed decades ago. They're creating new footage with different actors with digital faces portraying these characters. Now, I think all of the OTOY videos from through the Roddenberry Archive have been wordless. You know, it's a lot of long looks at special effects and slow walks and meaningful glances between people and that sort of thing, which is sometimes effective, sometimes not. Now, I don't know if they're going to progress to the point that these, you know, the digital Kirk and Spock are going to start talking.
I guarantee you they will. Yeah, I think it's the genie out of the bottle we will never be able to put back in.
Right.
And so I'm wondering how I'm going to feel about that, because, and if you, and also something else you said, one of these days, maybe it's 10 years from now, a really big actor who's still alive is going to sign full digital rights to their image and their voice. And that the floodgates are going to open, because, you know, the studios are really waiting for this. Like, dude, you know, they're waiting for it.
Right. I mean, even now, like most of the films that are coming out, like not most, but there's a lot of big films that are Ghostbusters again, or Beetlejuice again, or, you know, it's something again. And it's the old characters I watched when I was a kid are now 70 and they're back at it, you know?
Right.
And this sort of creates a new opportunity to do that beyond the point where these actors can realistically play their parts. I mean, we had a little bit of that with the latest Indiana Jones movie, where there was an extended like 20-minute opening sequence where it was the 40s and Indiana Jones was young again, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was very well. It's one of the best digital de-agings I've seen. And I don't know how much of it was body double and how much of it was just de-aging. I know he was on set. The thing that really gave it away was they didn't digitally change his voice, and so you still had 80-year-old Harrison Ford's voice coming out of 40-year-old Indiana Jones. And there's a lot of stuff like that, like with that. I just blanked on the title of the film, but there was a Scorsese picture that had Robert De Niro and so forth in it. And they played over the course of many decades.
The Irishman.
Was it The Irishman? Was The Irishman the one on Netflix?
Yeah,
where he was
that was it. Yeah, that was.
But in that,
really
I mean, you have like a 30-year-old looking De Niro who moves like a 70-year-old De Niro. You know what I mean? And things like that sort of jump out to you, whether you're thinking about it or not, because we've watched people so long in our lives and on film and in real life that you have an idea. Like I found the Shatner body double for older Shatner, and this very off-putting, because I've spent an inordinate amount of my life watching William Shatner. You know what I mean? Yeah. I know how he looks at different ages. I know how he moves. I know his gestures. You know what I mean? So when it's his face on someone else's body, it's a little bit off. I gotta say too, though, it could just be that I'm just worn out on people that I liked when I was a kid coming back as digital characters. Whether it be Luke Skywalker, they got Rod Serling on the new Twilight Zone. He popped up in one of them.
Same here.
Grand Moff Tarkin, Indiana Jones. He goes, that one Flash movie that had every DC character I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
Back, you know? And some that I hadn't. So I mean, that's part of it too, is I don't know how. I mean, people may disagree. People may eat it up and love to see every character they've ever seen in their lives back digitally. And I gotta say too, if a studio came to me and offered me a deal where my family is going to make money after my death off of them using my likeness, I might say great. Well,
you know, one final thought I had about it, it's very interesting when you talked about Star Trek, because what it made me realize is that we are dealing with a real life Star Trek scenario. Now, how many times have you seen Star Trek episodes where it's basically the computer kind of takes over for humans? And another theme about Star Trek, even though I was talking about an afterlife, and a lot of things about Star Trek is kind of accepting life, which includes death. You know, the whole thing behind Kirk has always been, they've always said about Kirk, you're not afraid to die. You just don't want to die a useless death or die alone. Even Tasha Yar even said in yesterday's Enterprise, I always knew that, you know, this uniform would come with the chance of dying. I want it to be worth something. So what am I saying with all that is I can see in our real world life, almost a Star Trek scenario, to your point. Like I said, nobody's calling Gary Lockwood, but what if Gary Lockwood just licenses his image, and Gary Lockwood at 70 or 80 never acts again looking like an 80-year-old. And until the day he dies, Gary Lockwood is always 25 and 30 in the movies.
Right.
Which is one weird thing. And again, this sounds like a Star Trek scenario, but it could be a real life thing. Our society as a whole could actually start learning to devalue old age and old people and looking old. If we're like, well, we don't have to go see Harrison Ford get old. We don't need to see Morgan Freeman get old. We don't need to see Michael Caine get old or Meryl Streep. We can just look at them eternally young. I can really see a weird world in future society where old people aren't valued, at least, especially on the screen. And they're not that valued on the screen right now.
Right.
If everybody can look young, maybe that becomes even less value to age.
Sure. Yeah, I was reading an article recently talking about Gen Zers having they feel like they're aging poorly. Like, and that's like a meme that's going around.
They're aging poorly, but they're not even 26 yet.
Right. But I think part of that is that their entire lives, they've been taking photos with filters on. You know what I mean? Whereas when we were kids, if someone pointed a camera at you, what you got was what you got. You didn't even know about it until a month later when you get the film back, you know?
Yeah.
And we all grew up with terrible photos of ourselves, but there weren't filters that I had available that would make me look better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of what I had was what I had, you know? Now I'm just sort of throwing that in there into the conversation for, I'm not an expert on it, and I don't know anything about Gen Zers really, except for I have one.
Yeah, Veronica, what we were saying was we could probably be facing in our real life what would almost be a Star Trek scenario, where maybe in future generations, if everybody can just be young and actors don't even want to be old on screen and nobody wants an old actor on screen, then maybe all actors kind of stay young. And honestly, that might devalue the value of old people in real life if everybody looks artificial. I actually can see that becoming a thing in our real life. Yeah. That's why things like this concern me.
Yeah. And we'll be like the Telosians, just reliving old lives in the thought record.
Right.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break for a promo. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking about the latest Lower Decks episodes of Gods and Angles. So stay right there. Look up, look down, look out. Here come the monkeys.
Mickey,
David,
Mike,
Peter.
We're talking about them in Monkeying Around. That's right. Monkeying Around has everything, including
interviews,
episode reviews,
album discussions,
and other incredible surprises.
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys. Beep boop. Spoilers.
And that's spoilers tonight for Star Trek Lower Decks, the season 5 episode of Gods and Angles. And to kick it off, we have a voicemail that came in on our voicemail line.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and play the voicemail, and then we'll respond to it. And then right there.
Hey, my name is Alan, longtime host, first-time caller. Just finished watching this week's episode of Lower Decks and really loved it. I thought the whole concept of a race of cubes and orbs was super cool. And then the whole Romeo and Juliet angle was really neat. Kind of predictable, but still it was really good. But the best part of the episode, well, first of all, we got more Dr. Ta'ana this week than we've had all season, and that was really nice. But the best part of the episode was getting to see Mariner on the opposite side of the problem this time, where she's the one who's helping someone else kind of go through their, coming to being what Starfleet is and kind of integrating into the crew and everything. And I thought it was really cool to see her being on that side of helping someone else to come as far as she has, because she's made a lot of progress over the last 5 seasons, and it's cool to see her being able to apply that to someone else's life and kind of help them along too. So a possible new recurring character. I mean, we only have a few episodes left, but maybe we'll see her again. But anyway, it was a very cool episode. I really loved it. Liked it a lot more than although last week's episode I did like more once I saw it a second time. So anyway, I really enjoyed it and hope everybody's doing well. Sorry I can't be there this week. So see y'all next Thursday. Bye.
All right. Now, if anyone wants to call and leave a voicemail like that on our voicemail line, you can. You can dial 307-387-1701. That's 307-387-1701. And you get a cute little voicemail from Veronica welcoming you, and you can leave a voicemail that we may play on the show. So I would encourage people to do that because I think it's fun.
Yes, indeed.
Now, let's react to Alan's voicemail there. Keith, what did you think?
I thought it was fine. I didn't love it, didn't hate it. It didn't engage me a lot, honestly. I actually understand. I agree with what Alan was saying in terms of the concepts, but the execution just didn't do a lot for me. Again, I didn't dislike it, but I didn't love it. I think the thing that I liked the most was when the orbs and the cubes started fighting, because it would look really good. I mean, and the cubes were firing square-shaped beams because they kept leaving square-shaped holes. Right. And I thought that was pretty cool. I know one thing Alan said I hadn't kind of thought about, but it's very interesting because Mariner is becoming more mature, yet on the other side, Boimler is starting to kind of almost go backwards with not having less faith in who he actually is. Now he's got Rutherford along because it's like, oh yeah, the thing is to be something you're really not. And they ran off, and I thought that was kind of cool.
That's not the moral.
Yeah, that was great. I thought it was fine.
What did you think, Veronica?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Keith. It was fine. I think I enjoyed this episode a little bit better than last week's.
Yeah.
But that was just because there were more fun, rompy type things going on.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't terribly new original stories. It wasn't super fun. It was interesting enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked that it was just a solid this week's Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't huge stakes. It wasn't a payoff or a part of a big plot or, you know, oftentimes in these serialized shows, every week is next week. Find out what happens next. And you don't get a whole lot of like we're old Star Trek where it was like, yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
it was good. It was a good way to spend my afternoon watching Star Trek or morning because I get up and watch it at 5 a.m. But I thought it was solid. I liked that they took sort of an old Star Trek trope of the two warring factions and did it in a unique way.
Yes.
You have these photonic beings, some are cubes and some are spheres. And a century ago, their nebulas collided and they've been at war ever since. I thought it wasn't a totally unique story. We've seen those sort of stories on Star Trek before, but we've never seen it. I mean, this is a good use of the animated format, you know, because it wasn't a couple of guys in masks or in different forehead ridges or with different colored hair or something. I thought the cubes and the spheres was very effective. I agree with what Alan said in the voicemail that it wasn't really surprising that it turned out to be a Romeo and Juliet story. You sort of see that coming as the story goes along. But I did also enjoy Ollie. I enjoyed what it gave Mariner the opportunity to show how much she has grown by mentoring someone who's very much like she used to be. And they had some fun playing off that with her like, I love the brig, and Mariner's like, haha, sort of like, I invented this, kid, kind of attitude. But I also like just the little detail that she's Zeus's granddaughter, and tying back in with Apollo's people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because it's Star Trek, you can have a character whose grandfather was Zeus. She's got Zeus powers,
and her headpiece was grown in
her laurel. Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah, why not?
But I mean, aliens have all kinds of weird head ridges, so
it's not as weird as the Minbari.
That's true. That's what I was thinking of.
Keith, what did you think about revisiting Who Mourns for Adonai?
I thought it was fun. It was fine. I thought it was weird that she had some kind of physical lightning bolts that fell out when she finished with her power. Of course, in Greek mythology, Zeus had lightning bolts, you know, that Cyclops made for him. I thought it was kind of fun. The laurel thing was weird, but it was just, you know, you just have to roll with it. And I did like when Mariner said something like, I thought Kirk kicked her ass or something like that when she talked about Zeus.
They went to the wind or whatever.
Yeah, they even made the joke about that. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny too. I actually liked her as a character. So in that way, I enjoyed her.
Yeah, I thought she was a little annoying in the way that Mariner used to be a little annoying.
Yeah.
But the fun of it was Mariner having a babysitter. You know, because Mariner is on the other side of it, which I think it did a good job of showing how that character has grown over the last 5 seasons. Because it wasn't that long ago that Mariner was still behaving that way, to be honest. But I do like to see that growth. I mean, even in this one, you had Mariner snatching her mom's pad and her mom's chastising her, and then it comes back around and sort of bite her that she had looked at that pad and had information she wasn't supposed to have. Because Mariner still, to a degree, acts like she owns the place. You know.
I found this character more off-putting than Mariner was in the beginning. Yes,
okay.
Significantly more.
Okay.
In what way?
I don't know. It was with Mariner. I didn't feel like she was purposefully being annoying.
Really?
For a lot of it, yeah.
I thought that was the point.
But
I thought she was.
I felt like this one was more.
Okay.
So,
okay. Do you think we'll see Ollie again?
I wouldn't be surprised, especially if they have some big finale. Maybe they need those electrical powers of hers.
Yeah.
I did think to nitpick. I did think it was weird if her only thing was that she happened to have some demigod powers. I don't know why she didn't tell one of her 6 or 7 past commands, because she keeps getting kicked off of ships, and it basically her electrical powers are basically always out of whack. Like, I don't know why she didn't tell somebody that.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen. I'm kind of reminded of Melora. The way Melora was quite stubborn about people not helping her and that sort of thing. Like, she's very. It seemed to me like Ollie would very much didn't want people to treat her differently because of the electrical powers that she had. So, I mean, I could sort of see that, but I mean, you're right. It seems like that would make things simpler for her to say, no, I didn't short this thing out. This is who I am. Right. But I could see too, like it would be kind of embarrassing to have laurels growing out of your head and everyone would be like, whoa, Zeus is your grandpa? That's awesome.
But I would have to explain why I got laurels growing out of my head. So you think some point you say.
Yeah. I guess they can't be trimmed. I don't know. I don't know what they're made out of.
I did think that at the end, the message, which is very common in Lower Decks and Star Trek, was that it's basically intelligence that wins out over everything else. Because yet another time I'm an engineer. And that was kind of the thing. That's definitely a Star Trek kind of message.
I thought the message was that you get ahead by pretending to be something that you're not.
You're right. That's not the moral.
Well, let's talk a little about Boimler's storyline, because people have noticed that he's carrying this pad with a different bevel around.
And then they keep saying, it's red.
Right.
They're like, what? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But they've noticed that he has this. I like how Rutherford was just kind of casually like, well, why do you keep reading that pad from the other dimension? He's like, what? But yeah, I guess in the other dimension, his alternate self had bonded with T'Ana and got a nickname and became in with the bridge crew. And now Boimler's, he's trying his darndest to do the same. Or flip, maybe I should say.
Yeah, flip. I thought that was pretty cool. And even though it was played for jokes, it was good.
That was my favorite part of the episode, was Boimler.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Yeah. I think even though it was played for jokes, I think it does touch on some realistic stuff, like any kind of alternate universe, like everything, like Marvel Comics for years. Peter Parker, the sad sack Peter Parker in the main universe, is always bumping into some Peter Parker who's like a multi-millionaire and super famous, or the one who, actually became a super famous wrestler. And he always has to think about, did I make the wrong choices? So I think what is interesting is if any of us met someone from another dimension or another reality that we think is more successful than we are, it might make us think about some things, especially when it's the exact same person. It's like, oh, heck, it's just because they acted differently than I did. So I can see that being kind of a temptation.
Yeah. If you met your alternate self and you're the CEO of your company, and he's just like, hey, buddy, you'll probably get there too. Just keep going. You're like, I really don't think I will. I don't on that course.
Right.
I do want to read your diary.
Yeah, Picard ran into that in Tapestry when he realized that he just made different choices that at the time made more sense, that he wouldn't have become the man he became. So if he made not just the safe choices, but sometimes the smart choices, in this case, he wouldn't have been Captain Jean-Luc Picard. So in that way, it's like they played it for jokes, but it actually really makes sense.
Yeah, and I like that it didn't just work.
Yes.
Because T'Ana, he's being a dork. And why are you, if you say flip one more time, I'm going to claw your eyes out.
Oh yeah. And when he called her, whatever he called her, the entire medical bay, they were like, she lost it. That was great.
I was half expecting her to like react positively to that though.
Kind of like Tellarite, where like cussing at me and insulting me is a sign of respect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean, it's well plotted because it's the surliest member of the crew that he has to try to become friends with,
Okay, so my absolute favorite part in the entire episode is when she's clawing him and he runs away and she's there and she does a little butt wiggle and pounces after him.
That was good.
That was my favorite part.
Okay.
That was fun. And also, is again, if you actually take lessons from it, it's also an abject lesson that even if this is duplicate, as it were, but you still need to be yourself, because he can't assume because he doesn't know how that guy truly became friends with her. I mean,
Right.
just going up and calling her whatever he called her is not necessarily, and also she doesn't necessarily react exactly like her counterpart in the other universe. Also, you know, we talked about that. There's a whole thing about there's still free will and choice. So maybe the other one wasn't as quick to get pissed off as this one is. I don't know.
Yep. We've got a comment from a new viewer.
Hello.
This, from Leonidas says, "Hey everyone."
Hi, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Welcome to the show. Thank you for watching. We'd love to see you again. Yeah, he's also assuming that the recollections that his alternate self was putting in these diaries is 100% accurate.
Yes.
And not his sort of sweetened version of events. You know, where in this one we saw Boimler go through kind of an embarrassing situation that wound up making him friendlier with T'Ana, but more like she's making fun of him than and you can kind of see Boimler putting it in his diary of like, I had a great day. I earned the respect of Dr. T.
Yes.
And he's going off this diary as if it's factual when in fact his other self could have bungled and embarrassed himself all the way to the position he was in, which Boimler, meeting him for a day, thought was better than his own position. And maybe it is, maybe it's not, you know.
I feel like that would be a great way to pull it all back together at the end. That would be hilarious.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that, and that would be funny if he found that out.
Yeah, and I do have the expectation though that along the way he's going to learn that he needs to just be himself.
Yeah,
you know, like that's just television, right? That's what the Shirley Rutherford can't be right that the moral of Lower Decks is going to be pretend to be someone you're not.
Even though that's really kind of life.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
We didn't see any of the it's been 2 weeks now. We haven't seen any of the parallel universe shenanigans.
Yeah.
The doorways to other universes and so forth.
And we have 4 episodes left.
Yeah, we have 4 left of Lower Decks entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would expect we're gonna, I mean, the plot arc, such as it is, will ramp up, the action will ramp up towards the end.
Right.
Usually you get some like banger episodes right there at the end of a Lower Deck season. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. We also haven't seen, they keep talking up all the legacy cameos. We haven't seen a lot of legacy cameos up to this point in the season.
No.
I don't remember any.
So I would expect that the end of the season is going to be kind of stacked with them.
Yeah.
I hope they're meaningful. You know, like I've said this before, but when Tom Paris came on, I didn't think Tom Paris was well used at all. You know, I thought it was kind of a waste of Tom Paris to bring him back the way he did. But I thought they made up for that with Nick Locarno, because I thought Nick Locarno was incredibly well used, and that was a really good use of that actor, you know, of Robbie McNeil. So I don't know. I hope if they have a lot of legacy cameos, I hope it's something meaningful, like Ram and Lita. I thought Ram and Lita was very well used, or were very well used. I hope it's something like that that builds the character rather than just popping out to say hi for a gag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that wouldn't really work. So it sounds like then at least the last 2, or maybe like I said, maybe the last 4. Are they just going to amp up the action and are they going to give us resolutions? Is Ransom going to get his own ship? You know, is everybody going to get promoted, etc.? Is the captain going to get a new ship? You know, are they going to finally promote her from the Cerritos to something else? Is she going to do first contact instead of second contact? I mean, there's so many things because I don't know what they're talking about. I know the showrunner said that I think they said the standard thing, like you said, in television. We wrapped it up, but we left it open. So I don't even know what that really means.
Yeah, they're talking about an interview about it that, you know, it's sort of they're looking at it as a pause because they're all still committed to doing Lower Decks in some capacity, doing something with these characters, right? So they're looking at it as a pause and sort of the end of this chapter of the story. So I would expect there to be some kind of satisfying resolution to the series. Now, whether that it just ends with a gag and the Cerritos flying off while, you know, Captain Freeman yells Mariner's name, you know, like who knows? Or it could end up, I mean, everyone leaves except Mariner, and then there's a group of new ensigns she's looking after. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could do with it. So I don't know. I don't really know what to expect. Lower Decks tends to not go the way that I think it's going to go. Oftentimes. You know.
Yeah,
that first season had the big like battle ending with the Pack-Leds, and then the second season ended. And they were like stripping the whole plating off the ship and flying through like a stellar phenomena to save another ship. That was the big action. You know what I mean? So it's hard to tell what they're going to do.
Yeah,
I did
I'm
like
very curious.
I did like the comment they mentioned. I think it was the USS Reseda, which they said was manned by reformed Maquis.
Oh yes.
I thought that was cute.
They talk about how tough that ship was in that case.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, in the whole, what have you thought of Lower Decks up to this point in the season?
Yeah, pretty good.
I've liked it.
Weren't quite as strong as I usually prefer.
Well, they're middle of the season episodes, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I like last season at this point better than I've liked this season so far.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But again, I still can't think of a single episode I have actively disliked in the show.
Yeah.
So that's a high percentage.
Oh yeah, for sure. We have a comment from Tiger Blade 2002. Late again. Hey y'all.
Hi, Wayne.
Welcome.
What's up, Wayne?
And you're just in time to find out where people can find more of Keith Johnson.
You can find me on X and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
How about us?
And Veronica's shaking her head, maybe because I'm still saying X.
I can't believe you're still there.
I don't. You know how little I used it.
Everybody's going to Blue Sky now.
Yep.
Yeah, guess I need to.
Say that again.
Where can people find more of us?
Feltnerdy.com.
That's right. And the date's just been announced for the holiday Puck and Puppet show at the Center for Puppetry Arts. It'll be December the 21st, and it starts at 11 p.m. And my birthday begins at midnight, December 22nd. So we'll probably be going on stage right about the time my birthday starts. So come out and celebrate with me and vote for us.
Yes. We will be playing that card up.
And where else can people find us?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
And we're airing some fun episodes right now. We got together with some friends and watched some monkey stuff. 33 and Third Revolutions per Monkey and not highly respected biopic Daydream Believers, and we're giving our reactions to those. So check out Monkeying Around, and you can find all of that stuff on Blue Sky now, because we've been sort of waiting in the Blue Sky. So Earth Station Trek's on Blue Sky, Felt Nerdy's on Blue Sky, Felt Nerdy and Dirty's on Blue Sky, Monkeying Around's on Blue Sky. We individually are on Blue Sky. We're giving it a shot. We're giving Blue Sky a shot. So if you're on Blue Sky, look us up. But join us next week. We'll be going live next Thursday.
Next Thursday is Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Oh, you're right. Don't join us next week. Enjoy time with your family. Yes. And then the week after that, we'll be back with 2 episodes of Star Trek Lower Decks. So
that'll be 7 and 8.
Yep. Next Thursday, everybody has shore leave. We expect everybody back in 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about 2 episodes back to back of Star Trek Lower Decks. It's going to be a good time. We go live on Thursday evenings. And if you miss us for 2 weeks, we've got 192 back episodes now. Wow. So I think you probably have time to listen to all of them in a marathon before 2 weeks are out. So everyone has their homework assignments. Also, before we log out, I wanted to say congratulations to our friends over at the Enterprise Planning Podcast, who we've had Maria on this show before. I've been on their show. We've known Maria for like 12 years. She was in actually
our very first puppet show.
Our first long form show we did. Maria and her husband, Steven, and our friend Charles Pillsbury were at that time we're performing as Death by Puppets here in the Atlanta area. And we did some shows with them. We've known Maria forever. So I was excited when she has an Enterprise podcast. I wasn't excited that it was Enterprise, but it's actually a very entertaining show. But my point is just that they have now joined the ESO network. So they're a sister show of ours. So you may have heard their promo in this episode. Check out Enterprise Planning. It's a very fun show. Whether you everyone knows what I feel about Enterprise, and I listen to them every 2 weeks when their episode comes out. So it's a very entertaining, whether you enjoy Enterprise or not, I think. All right, Veronica, do you have a closing for us this week?
I like the brig.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Have a good evening. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time.